All right, we're back YouTube. We figured it out. Just had to restart the program. But let's jump right back into this tutorial. So I'm first going in and jumping into the frame portion of the hairline. I'm sorry, the haircut steps. So this is a normal client of mine. There's no need for me to do a full consultation. But typically that would be my first step, is to make sure that we're on the same page through my consultation. Um, Again, listening is the biggest part of the consultation. So understanding what they need, what they want, if anything's going to change. This will be the one time you want to change something. You want to change anything, bro? I think I might. This will be the one time. No, I know we're going to stick with the same cut. Um, but I think the most important thing that Terrence asked from me is consistency. So um, that's what I'm going to be doing, y'all, is showing y'all what I do to stay consistent. And with his particular haircut, the number one thing is getting the frame together first. And what I mean by frame is, because I am dealing with his hairline being a little more difficult, it's not as easy to see, I'm going to go ahead and outline his hairline first. All right, so I'm going to show you what I do and how I go about that process. But if you're dealing with anybody who has a lighter hairline or hairline that's not as dense, the best thing that you can do to help yourself out is to go ahead and set those parameters as your first step. So I'm just clearing some of the hair now just to get this out the way. But let me show you what I mean as far as clearing the hairline and putting my frame on. May, can you go back to the point of view? All right, so can y'all see now where I'm at with this hairline? Let me bring you down a little bit too. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and visually show y'all where I will put his hairline. So I typically don't do this before I start, but just to show y'all exactly what I'm looking at, I'm gonna go ahead and line up right here, bring this corner over. And that's what I mean by framing it. So I'm gonna step in closer so you can see even more exactly what I'm talking about. So see how right here in the corner it's not as dense, right? So I need to make sure that I don't lose track of where this natural line is supposed to be. So as I go through with my trimmers, I'm gonna go ahead and set that line right now. Now this will not only save you from being confused and maybe lost on the back end on where to put it, your client's hairline, but it'll also save you time. You know, when you have a lack of clarity, it definitely takes you longer to get through your haircut process, because you spend a lot of time guessing or trying to remember where you left off. In this case, now I put his hairline in there. I know exactly where I need to go back to and reference. And I'm doing a bald taper on the side, so all this is going to be cleared out. I'm going to go ahead and bald that right now. So we're going to go ahead and put up the 3 haircut steps that I go through on the screen. So we'll do consult, assess, and frame. So again, I started with the frame portion first because of his hairline, because I needed to know exactly where I'm going. The first thing I did was put that frame on. And because he's not a new client, I skipped the consultation process. But if he was new, he would have told me that, like, hey, Mike, I want you to make sure that you keep my hairline as natural as possible, but still keep it sharp. So we got to find that balance. So this is what I'm doing now. And this corner about right there. And this is the balance between sharp and natural. And See how it gets thin right here? I'm not going to try to go up. I'm just going to go straight across and define where his natural, most consistent hairline would be. Put that right across there. So again, if y'all are checking in live with me, we can kind of consider this like a one-on-one. So if you have any questions, this is the best time to ask them. If you need some clarity on the steps or anything that I'm talking about, go ahead and ask it now in the chat. And this will be more like a consultation. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask them now. And what I'm doing here, I'm continuously combing his hair over the top of where this hairline is, on where I want this hairline to be. Now, although this is not going to be my last pass over his hairline, I still want to make it as easy as I can for myself on the back end, right? So combing this hair over this hairline will put any hair that may be misplaced later when he shampoos his hair. It'll make sure that his hairline stays as consistent as possible. And again, I'm now standing in front of him, checking for symmetry. And I do this by tilting his head up and down. All right, and my outline is finished. So again, on this side, I'm doing the bald taper. I'm going to go ahead and clear this all out. This will be a mid to high tint fade. So all this hair will be bald. I'm going to go ahead and set my first guideline right now. And you saw when you guys first came on, you saw that I was going through and cleaning up the hairs around his ears and the hair on his beard that were taken off. Because I already had my trimmers in my hand, it just made sense for me to go ahead and take care of all those things at the same time. Keeping in mind that I am still on the schedule. This is a live tutorial, but at the same time, I still have a schedule. So I have to keep in mind punctuality. I know Terrence don't want to be here till about 9:30, 10 o'clock, so.
The wife not having that.
Lay's not going to let him be here till 9:30, 10 o'clock, so we still going to get him out in a reasonable amount of time. So what that means for you as a barber is that you need to make sure that you're maximizing and being, I'm just not saying maximize, that you're being as efficient as you possibly can. And part of that is making sure that you're maximizing the time that you're using with every tool. Fully maximizing the potential and the time that you have with that tool. Meaning like, there's no need for me to put these down and go back later to cleaning this hair off if I already have them in my hand. I'm not going to go through and give him a final line on his goatee, but clearing this all out now will save me some time on the back end. Okay, so the frame is done. His hairline is framed. Now I can move more confidently around the fact that once I get to the final part of his haircut, when I get down to actually really defining his line and adding enhancements, there's no guesswork. Once you start cutting off hair, you're already making it thinner, right? You're making it more light. So sometimes it can be really difficult to, at that point, try to find where you need to be going, right? You've already lightened up and you've erased most of your point of reference. So doing this first is one of my keys to success with dealing with a difficult hairline, with a hairline that isn't as straightforward to put on. So that part's done. And this is my 4-guard. Let's get around so y'all can see a little bit better light. There we go. All right, so this is my 4-guard. Again, this is the best guard and my go-to guard for most kinky, curly hair textures. This foreguard will keep it low, but still at a point where it can still maintain some curls. So if your client wants to have curls, this is the best length if they still want to keep it low and manageable. And the longer your hair gets too, like it may get curly, but then it becomes unmanageable, right? It gets too long. Now it gets matted when you're sleeping. So a foreguard is kind of the go-to, especially for Terrence. But if anybody comes in my chair and they don't know exactly how long they want their hair to be, but they know they don't want it to be a lot of work to keep the curls in place, then a foreguard. Now, one of the keys that I'd like to reference or think about when I am doing this part of the haircut, and I'm really just debulking, taking off the hair that I know I'm not going to be using, right? My goal is to keep it even all over. This doesn't mean that I have to use the same guard the entire time. It just means that the look needs to look like it's even all over. So in the front here, with some of these thin spots, I have to do my best to make sure I fade around these thin spots a little bit, right? To make sure that they blend with the more dense hair around the area. And sometimes it's not as straightforward as just going against the grain or with the grain. Sometimes you have to go across the grain too, right? Our hair, sometimes we have multiple swirls. I know he has a swirl right here, a couple on the front hairline. So if I'm just going simply only against the grain and with the grain, then I'm not truly cutting it even all over. So this is the point where if you're already going against the grain, you have a guard on, you can trust that no matter what direction you go, you're still safe. You don't have to spend a lot of time after you're done, excuse me, after you're done trying to, okay, well, I know this doesn't look even anymore. No, go ahead and now in the beginning and go in every direction. Curly hair has a lot of texture to it, so even if it appears to be looking like it's all laying in the same direction, oftentimes it's not. And sometimes the look of it won't necessarily give you everything you need to know either, right? Because sometimes the sound, you can just tell by the way it sounds. If I'm done in this area, then this hair that I'm going over, it won't make any more noise, right? So I can kind of use that as a reference. So you guys got any questions in the chat? Is anybody live in right now? We're definitely gonna save this tutorial and put it on my Instagram. I'm sorry, not on my Instagram, on my YouTube page. But this is the time, if you have any questions, to go ahead and ask them now. It doesn't necessarily have to be only pertaining to this type of haircut. If you have any questions in general about this type of, about any kind of cutting, I guess any kind of fade, I use some of the same basic steps with all my fades. The steps I like to go through are clearing out bulk, setting my weight line, setting my bald line, and then fading between those two sections. So whether that's a bald fade, tint fade, shadow fade, if it's a fade, I'm still sticking to those same guidelines. I set my weight line, set my bald line, and then I fade between the two. All right, cool. All right, now that that's done, I'm gonna do a slight taper on his hairline. I guess you would consider this somewhat of a shadow fade taper, but my goal is to just to lay down this hair right here on his hairline. So I'm gonna grab my zero guard, open it all the way, and just flick right here at this hairline. Careful not to take it up too high because I don't want to change the look and the shape of this haircut. But to give his haircut longevity, the first part that's going to grow out will be his hairline. That's the first part that will start to look messy. I just dropped the guard, but it's good because I was done using it at the time anyway. Alright, so here's my bald line. Here's my weight line. I'm using a 1 all the way open. And I say weight line because I know that I don't want my fade to be taken up any higher than right here. So this is also like a secondary guideline. There's a ball guideline and a weight guideline. So here, the same guard, 1 all the way open, and I'm bringing it up to the bottom of his earlobe. So that's my reference point. And if you're doing a mid taper, I would say mid to high taper, the earlobes is a great point of reference for you to look at and to consider whenever you're trying to find a place to start your fades. Not start your fade, I would say more in your fade. This is the point where you don't want to have it any higher. And most head shapes also have the occipital bone, and the occipital bone typically sits right around the bottom of the earlobe. So as you see right here with him, yep, it starts to sit right in here. So I know that as I take my transition from the length on top to the faded section, right through here is right underneath his occipital bone, and that's where I can knock out some weight. And that'll keep the fade and the haircut balanced on his head shape. If it sits too high, if it's sitting on top of the occipital bone, then you've now done a completely different haircut. That's more of just a regular fade. A temp fade should be always underneath this occipital bone. Even a high temp fade should be underneath that bone.
See with your anatomy?
Don't ask me how to spell it, but I can say it. Occipital bone. If you in the chat right now, you graduated from barber school. I don't know if spelling was a part of it, but go ahead and type occipital bone in the chat. Turn off spell check so y'all ain't cheating. Alright, so now I'm down to my 0 guard. I'm 0 open now. And again, I'm still working within the framework of this section, right? So I have my top guideline. Now I know I'm not going any higher than here, really, right? My goal is to fade this line out. Doesn't mean I have to take steps all the way up here to do so. So I'm now working in this bottom section. And I'm going to fade down. So I got my 0 all the way open. How's the lighting with this point of view camera, Meg? Is it okay? Cool. Alright, so now I'm all the way closed with this 0 guard. Working down in my sections. Alright, so I was all the way open towards the top, closed towards the bottom, and now I can go halfway and be halfway in this section. Doing some point cutting, some notching techniques. Cool. So now this bottom section is done. I'm gonna go now work on knocking out this top weight line. So I put it in with a 1.5. I'm gonna go with a 2 guard all the way open and just flick at this area. So I'm going up through that line and beveling my blade, my trimmer, and my clipper all the way out. All right, let's go 2 closed. Same technique. All right, let's go back to my 1.5 guard. Let's start all the way open. And that was all the way closed. So now I can switch to clipper over comb. So this will help save me some time as I don't have to go back to my 0. Now that most of my fade is done, all I have to do now is just clean it up and polish the blend. I can do that with clipper over comb. So I have my clippers all the way closed. My comb is going to act like my guard, and I'm going to go through and attack any of the areas that I see that may be just a little inconsistent. Maybe it just looks like it maybe not as balanced as the other side. So I can knock that out using clipper over comb. Keeping in mind that I want to maintain a 45-degree angle with my comb, so that's about like this. That's pretty much a 45-degree angle. And I'm also keeping in mind that I don't want to take this fade up any higher, right? So I'm not going to try to take this blend all the way up here. All this right here is fine. I want his hair to still be curly right up into the point where it starts to blend. Alright, let's go back and do some more notching. All the way open this time with my 0. As I go lower in this section, I can close up and use just the corner. As I go higher, I have to make sure that I open this blade up using this notching technique. Okay, so I had my 0 guard on. Now I need to fade behind the ear on this side. Right here on the hairline, just flicking and knocking off this weight, this density that's on his hairline. Again, using clipper over comb. Definitely my secret weapon is this clipper over comb technique. It's my most versatile technique. It works on any density, any hair, any texture. so now this is going back to my fade technique. This is my zero guard all the way open. I have my ball line, I have my weight line. As I mentioned, whether I'm doing a ball fade, tent fade, shadow fade, I'm still working in I have two visual things that I'm looking at, right? I'm looking at the weight line, I'm looking at my ball line. If it's a shadow fade, it's not a ball line, it's just my bottom line of reference. But with your fading, it still comes down to contrast. So even if you are doing a shadow fade, you still want to take it down as much as you can, because a fade always looks best when there's a lot of contrast. Your job is just to blend and to make that contrast look as smooth as possible. But that's what attracts somebody's eye when they look at your client's haircut, is that contrast. Now what makes it real is that if your fade is jacked up, that contrast is still going to attract that person's eye. So either way, they're going to be looking. You got to make sure you put your best work in on display. So here I'm going between open and close, and I'm just notching out these lines and cleaning up my blend section. Again, I have my bottom line and my top line. As I'm notching through this section, I'm just using the corner, and I'm going between open and closed. So when I'm closed, I'm working down here where this line was. Open, I'm up close top to where this top weight line is. Just going between open and closed, open and closed. Now after I do those two, if I still see that there's a little bit of unevenness with this section of my blend, then I can go halfway. Right, so top of my fade, going with my 1.5, all the way open. Again, trying to keep as much weight as I can, because weight equals contrast. Contrast is great for fades. So I'm all the way open right now. Now I'm closed. And I can go halfway just to make sure that's even. And now back to no guard. I can just use the corners to knock out any piece of this blend right here that you may see that's a little inconsistent. So see right in here, back here, there's some spots. I can just use the corner of my blade. And if you can remember, that's exactly where I put my top weight line. So now I'm just blending between the two sections. Again, clip over comb is your best friend. Just going to smooth that out some more. And that side's done. Back on this side, zero open. All the way closed. And now I'm halfway. Alright, so no guard, back to knock out this line. So I put this line in with my trimmers, and I'm going to knock it out with my clippers. And this is possible because my clippers are pretty close to zero gap. So if you're familiar with blades, this is close to a 5/0 blade, which means it's not quite ball, but it's right there. Alright, so I should be able to get out this ball line with these clippers. You see how precise and short my strokes are right here. I'm not flipping up and doing a lot. I'm working right on that ball line. All right, now I'm halfway. And all the way open. And again, just barely taking it up little by little. Slightly higher than where I was before. Okay, so this bottom section is pretty much done. I see some pieces that I can clean up, so let me go back to closed and just notch right here just to do some cleanup work. Again, notching is the perfect blade for cleanup work. If you ever see any issues with your blend or anything that you see that may look a little off, a little inconsistent, using just the corner of your blade and just cutting through that section is the perfect way to kind of slice up that weight, right? And smooth out your blend. Let's move to the top side of my weight, of my blend. So back to my 1.5 guard, all the way open. All right, now I'm all the way closed, working back on this blend. Cool. So my fade is pretty much done. This is still a really good fade, but to take it up to another level, right, to make it more clean, more of an ideal fade, I'm gonna go ahead and brand that. I'm gonna go ahead and keep using that notching technique, and that will continue to smooth out and make this fade even more blurry, right? So using your notch, using the corner of your trimmer, your clippers, and just notching at that line, notching at that section, little by little, will continue to refine your blend, smooth it all the way out. And the great thing about this technique is it doesn't take a lot of time. You can just hone in and zoom in on, look at wherever you see inconsistencies, and by just using the corner, you can attack those portions, those pieces, one by one. All right, all the way open. And again, remember in the beginning, guys, this is where I put that top weight line. So this is my point of reference, right? And I'm still clear. I still know where I'm at. I know what guard I'm supposed to be using because I set boundaries. Say it again. All right, clipper over comb. Cool. All right, back to his hairline. Gonna knock out some of the density right there, a little bit of the weight right there on the line. Again, I want his hairline to look as balanced as possible, not just with the line itself, but with the hair that's sitting over the top of it. So let me put on my zero guard. Put on my zero guard, thin this side out a little bit. Right here, take some weight out. Even do a little clip over comb with this technique as well. Again, clip over comb is your best friend, most versatile technique. 45-degree angle, boom. Even on this side, it's a little heavy right here. So remember I told you guys in the beginning that it has a little bit of lightness right here and it's way more dense on this side right here in front of that. So I can do clipper over comb to balance that out some. This is the part where I don't want contrast. I don't want contrast on these areas where his hair is a little thinner. I do want contrast with the blend, so I want people's eyes to be focused in on the blend, not on the light spots. So I reduce contrast where I don't want you to look. guys, that is the tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and end the live at this point because I've already demonstrated what it takes to balance out a difficult hairline. So my first step was to set my frame as my very beginning, most important step. I know where his hairline is when he first comes in the shop, so I use my barber pencil just to show you visually what I usually look at. So I put my frame in, I went ahead and drew it in. But if they're coming in and it's been maybe a week or two, there shouldn't be a need for you to use the pencil. All the hair should still already be there. So you go through, put that line in first, and then go through your fade steps. After you go through your fade steps, now you're ready to polish his haircut up, right? The fade is in place. I just gotta line him up now, right? Style his hair, give his curls a little bit of shine. Definitely gonna be using the Ideal Hair Care Curl and Wave Cream, you know what I'm saying? Quick plug. But now that his hairline is in place, my job is now done. Like, I'm working downhill at this point. So this is pretty much it, guys. This is how you deal with a difficult hairline. It's all about contrast, right? I want to reduce contrast where I don't want people's eyes to look, and I want to increase contrast with my fades and where I want the fade section to be. So after I finish this haircut all the way, we'll go ahead and record another quick video just to show you what it looks like all the way done. But for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and end here. But thanks again, y'all, for tuning in to Ideal Barber's YouTube page. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comment section. And yeah, we'll be back next week with another tutorial. All right, y'all. Peace.